Good morning. Welcome. It is wonderful to be here, both with those who are with us online and those gathered here in our air-conditioned Hale Chapel at the church on the corner of Marlborough and Berkeley in Boston's Back Bay. I want to extend a particular welcome to any visitors who are with us today. If you would like to know more about First Church, you can go to firstchurchboston.org or talk to me or to our speaker today, Peter Banos, or really almost any member of the congregation at coffee hour following the service on the porch, and I hope you will join us. I have a couple of announcements. The main one is that 2 weeks from today, on the 25th, I'm not sure of that date, but I am pretty sure of it, we will be having the first discussion of our common read, which this year is the book selected by the UUA, Repentance and Repair, Making Amends in an Unapologetic World, by Rabbi Danya Rutenberg, and I have even a visual. I know some people acquired this when we had some copies for purchase and for rotation earlier in the summer. If you haven't yet acquired a copy, I can tell you the In Spirit bookstore gets it to you very quickly, and also I could be persuaded to loan this one out for a week if someone is looking for that. So that is in 2 weeks following the service with a light lunch beginning at 12:30 and ending at 1:45. Our speaker today is a longtime member and poser of provocative questions and interesting thoughts here at First Church, Peter Banos. And I look forward very much to hearing from him, as I know you do as well. So let our worship begin.
Thank you, Barbara. As most of you know, I've been a hyperactive member of this congregation for a long time. This isn't my first sermon here either, and I think I've gotten better at winnowing my material to make it fit together within a reasonable time frame and still make sense, but we shall find out. The other day, as I had the back of my mind constantly preoccupied with my upcoming role in this service, I was looking through one of the newspapers. I can't remember which, I can't remember in what context, but suddenly I saw this quote from Wendell Berry's novel Jayber Crow. And it struck me as, well, I thought the cosmos was trying to tell me something, but perhaps there's a word of hope in it for you as well, so I will share it with you as my opening words. Some of the best things I have ever thought of, I have thought of during bad sermons. On that note, I invite Barbara to light our chalice as we say together our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now, if you'll take a moment, sorry, I should have said this before you sat down. This happens every week. Take a moment to greet one another. Wave at the camera to greet those of us who are present remotely. And our opening hymn, number 12, O life that maketh all things new. And the responsive reading is in the order of service. It is by Mohan Embar, copyright 2001, and if this doesn't get me fired, nothing will. Responsive reading in the insert. Please say the lines that are in italics. You don't like responsive reading. We don't like responsive reading. Responsive reading runs contrary to everything you believe in as a Unitarian Universalist, because instead of formulating your own thoughts and opinions in your own unique way, you simply repeat words that I have chosen for you. Like a store-bought greeting card, responsive reading saps us of the ability to choose the words and expressions that we ourselves would have chosen. Look, I can make you moo like a cow, moo, or bleat like a sheep, bah. Repeat after me. I will never, ever mindlessly repeat words that someone else has chosen for me. I will never, ever mindlessly repeat words that someone else has chosen for me. And I will always take charge of my thoughts by formulating them in my own unique way. And I will always take charge of my thoughts by formulating them in my own unique way. If anyone here is familiar with the Monty Python movie, Life of Brian, there's a scene where Brian's haranguing the crowd, and at one point he says, "We are all individuals," and the crowd repeats, "We are all individuals," and one fellow in the back of the crowd says, "No, I'm not." Anyway, now for some music.
I shall know why when time is over.
We come now to the time in our service when we come together as a community to share joys and concerns that are on our minds, that are part of our thinking and meditation as we are here together this morning. So if you have something you would like to share, if you'd like to come forward, take the microphone, introduce yourself, and take a pebble from the bowl, tell us what you would like to tell us, and drop the pebble into the vessel of water. So Mary and then John.
I'm Mary Collins and a longtime member of this church. Actually, I grew up in it. I'd like to put in a pebble in memory of my beautiful sister, Debbie, whose birthday was yesterday. She played viola in many services at this church, and we miss her terribly.
Good morning. I just was, as I was walking in the church this morning, I looked over and I saw this bright green patch. And I want to thank Pam or Javier or whoever has done this job, because it is absolutely gorgeous to see this beautiful green instead of patches of brown. So let's give a hand to
I'm David Reno, and most of you probably know me. And my wife is now in Marine Bay rehab in Braintree. I'm sure she'd like a visit from people. She's still hanging in there, trying to get her to do more exercises. I wanted to actually give a tribute to a person who was an acquaintance. Today's newspapers have announced the death of Ross Terrell, an Australian, who was a great China scholar. I shared a taxi ride with him once to Harvard Health. And there is a very common saying, if you see something, say something. To which, being a Unitarian, my reincarnation is, well, if you know nothing, learn something. And Ross Terrell, a scholar of China, has written a biography of Mao Zedong, of his widow, and about China, from the perspective of an Australian. I also have his autographed book, The Australians. And so if you would like to learn about China, his books are easily readable to anybody who could read Time, Newsweek, or the New York Times, the Boston Globe. So my tribute to Ross Terrell.
Just to follow on David's mention of Anna's move to the Marina Bay Center, I have a card that anyone who would like to sign and add a message at coffee hour, I have that with me. So if someone would like to.
Hi everyone, I'm Sebastian. This is my first time here. I'm visiting Boston for a bit. But yeah, I would like to put a pebble for new beginnings, to not return to old things, old habits, old people that God has already saved me from, and to just be confident that these new beginnings will bear fruit.
My name's Heather, and I just wanted to give a shout out to all the church members who really keep this place going, especially in the summer, and to thank Heather for such a beautiful song.
If there is no one else, I will place another pebble for the joys and sorrows that we carry in our hearts unspoken, and echoing Mary in particular for all of the friends and family in our lives who are not still with us but are with us always and every day.
Thank you all for that, for all that you have shared, for all that you bring with you. Take a moment now, breathe deeply, relax. If you remember Helen's breathing technique from last week, try that out. Look around you for a moment. Rest in the awareness that whatever we bring with us, whatever lies ahead, whatever the ups and downs of our lives, we are here. We are here together, including those attending remotely. And now I get to talk for a while. My readings, I think I'll start with the one from Sigmund Freud's Future of an Illusion. Ignorance is ignorance. No right to believe anything is derived from it. No reasonable man will behave so frivolously in other matters or rest content with such feeble grounds for his opinions or for the attitude he adopts. It is only in the highest and holiest things that he allows this. Critics persist in calling deeply religious a person who confesses to a sense of man's insignificance and impotence in face of the universe, although it is not this feeling that constitutes the essence of religious emotion, but rather the next step, the reaction to it, which seeks a remedy against this feeling. He who goes no further, he who humbly acquiesces in the insignificant part man plays in the universe, is, on the contrary, irreligious in the truest sense of the word. And from the ending of The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, there is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. And now the question of the day, where am I going with all this? If you've read the blurb in the order of service in the e-news, or if you guessed from my sermon title, I am alluding to Pascal's famous wager. It's a regular trope in the discussion of faith and reason, faith versus reason, belief and non-belief. The basic argument is Blaise Pascal lived in the 17th century. He was a brilliant mathematician and also a practiced gambler. And combining these two interests of his, he made fundamental contributions to the theory of probability. He also wrote a collection of essays and mini essays called Pensées, Thoughts. And along the way, he created this argument. We cannot know whether or not there is a God. But we can't help picking one alternative or the other. Now, if there is no God, and whatever goes with that, an afterlife, bliss in heaven, torment in hell, if none of that exists, if this life on earth is all we have, and that's what we think, and we turn out to be right, we gain nothing from being right. If we're wrong, if we live our lives in the hope of an afterlife, of God, of heaven, and we turn out to be wrong, we lose nothing. On the other hand, if there is a God, there is a reward for his followers, his faithful followers, and perhaps a punishment, or perhaps even eternal oblivion for those who do not believe, then if we believe, we get an infinite reward, eternity in heaven, total bliss. And if we lose, if we believe incorrectly, we do not believe, then we lose out on all of that. So, even though, and he was very clear about this is not an argument for the existence of God. It's an argument that it's a reasonable bet, because it gives an infinite reward against, I mean, a very small probability, but still an infinite reward as against a strong probability, even a near certainty of not getting anything. It's worth betting on a tiny probability of an infinite reward. People have found many difficulties with this. Most of them center around the concept of God and the concept of belief, or the nature of God and belief. Another problem is his use of infinity. But all of these are tied together, and I'm going to try to disentangle them to some extent. I might not succeed entirely, bear with me. They're all wrapped up in the fact that Pascal was a man of his time, and to him, in the middle of always, almost entirely, explicitly Christian Europe, mostly Catholic Europe, faith was a binary option, or it seemed that way. You either accept the entire Christian faith package as handed down, or you say no to all that. And his argument reads very differently to us who know otherwise. Let me state here that I place myself on the non-believing spectrum, as I call it. I am not a hardcore atheist, but I lean that way. I am not a believer in any of the faith traditions stated as doctrine, stated as dogma. I once read a collection of arguments for and against, and one defender of traditional Christendom stated rather plaintively, he asked, what have we really learned in all of these thousands of years? What do we know that our ancestors did not know that makes it totally impossible to believe traditional doctrine? The ancestors knew as well as we do that dead men don't normally get up and walk around. Blind men don't suddenly begin to see. That's why these things were such a big deal. That's why they were called miracles. They knew that women do not give birth without having had male companionship of a certain sort. That's why the virgin birth of Jesus was a big deal. We come along and say, oh, that doesn't happen, it can't. They knew it didn't happen, but they think it happened. Why can't we believe that? Well, my answer to this is what we've learned. In my case, this is going to be an I statement. What first started me on the path of disbelief in the faith of our ancestors, who in my case were Greek Orthodox Christians, was the discovery of that other people's ancestors thought differently. They didn't agree. Even people living didn't agree. Nobody could give an answer to the one, what to me seemed the most important question. What reason is there to think my ancestors were right and not other people's ancestors? And even within the Christian tradition, so many different points of view, and nobody could say, why this and not that? Why the Bible? Not only why read it the way we do, but why not that? Why not some other book? So I gradually reconciled myself to the fact that I had no firm basis for accepting any doctrine of the transcendent. Not that I lost a certain hankering for a transcendent, but that I couldn't rely on any particular authority on earth to tell me anything about it. And that remains the case for me. So I look at Pascal's wager and I wonder, well, many people have raised the issue that you can't turn your belief on or off at will. So placing a faith as a bet isn't possible. And Pascal knew that. Remember, he was a gambler. He knew perfectly well that betting on a long shot does not imply thinking that it's going to miraculously pay off. He simply calculated the odds. So, yeah, he had an answer to this. If you are persuaded by his argument that faith is a good bet, but you still haven't got the faith, luckily he was a 17th century Catholic Frenchman. He had a concept of the means of grace. So he said, try it out. Go to church. At one point he said, stupefy your doubts with holy water. Drown them in holy water. Because he believed that was possible. If you went through the motions, he was not saying going through the motions is enough to save you, to earn you heaven, but he said it might make you receptive to the faith that God grants. Okay, but again, how do you know? This is the other question. How do you know you've got the right God? Many arguments against Pascal say, okay, what if it's Anubis? What if it's Zeus? There are not only many kinds of God, many gods, there are many kinds of God. And as I've said, the kind of person in heaven who gives thunder, provides thunder and lightning, and judges everything we do, and sends some of us to a happy and some to an unhappy afterlife. That kind of God I find implausible. But a more philosophical conception, a deist creator who doesn't micromanage the world but simply lets it run, I have no argument against that. I don't see any particular reason to believe in it, but I see no reason not to either. Similarly, Tillich's ground of all being, or an Aristotelian prime mover or first cause. But they're not what people are arguing about. People are arguing about a particular, mostly Abrahamic vision of God as a person with whom we have to do, with whom we necessarily have to deal. And if there were such a person, I think he or she would have found a more unambiguous means of letting us know. So that's the belief problem and the what kind of God. But looked at purely from the point of view of Pascal's argument, is any one God a better bet? He argues that the God, who for him was the only God to be considered, offered an infinite reward. Infinity is a mathematical concept. People have a valid use for it, but face it, we wouldn't know infinity if we saw it. We wouldn't be able to recognize eternity even if we were living it. The science fiction writer Arthur Clarke once posited a law that any sufficiently advanced science is indistinguishable from magic. I think that any sufficiently large quantity or number is, for practical purposes, indistinguishable from infinity. Any sufficiently long period of time is indistinguishable from eternity for everyday purposes. So I don't think with these things. I have no idea what an infinite good is. But I certainly think a universalist God would be a far greater thing than some of the nastier versions of Jehovah. A heaven where everybody, all of our friends and loved ones, and even people we don't like that much, get to participate, would be a much greater thing than a heaven. Not everyone agrees. Tertullian, the early Christian saint theologian, is famous for arguing that the joys, the bliss of the saints in heaven would not be complete without a ringside view of the sufferings of the damned. I'd give him a pass because he lived in a time of real persecution and Christians were being burned at the stake and fed to lions, and they were a little bit upset. I don't blame anyone who isn't quite ready for universalism, who thinks there ought to be a hell somewhere just for the Hitlers and Pol Pots of the world. I don't feel that way, but I can understand it and respect it. But a hell that you can fall into accidentally simply by having the wrong metaphysical views, I don't think is such a good thing. So if I were to bet on a God, heck, if a God is infinitely greater than an ordinary creature, then Mormonism would offer the best bet, because if you do if you take all the vows and covenants and whatever, Mormonism offers you the hope of becoming a god someday and having your own universe to rule over. That's a better deal, I think. But again, the fact is you can't believe or disbelieve simply because you think it's a good bet. So what do you do? Well, William James came up with a more modern spin on this. He redefined truth, basically, and I don't follow him all the way there, but I recognize what he's trying to do. He's trying to justify faith, not faith in any one particular thing, in whatever is, as he put it, a live option for you, depending on your personality, depending on your background. a positive view of the transcendent, of the afterlife, however you define it, is justified if it produces good results. If it makes you a better person in this life, if it causes you to act in a better way than you would without that. The example he gives, I was going to mention train robberies in my the blurb in the email in the e-news, because that would really make you wonder where I was going. He was the example of, what about a man riding a railroad train and a gang of robbers take over and threaten to shoot everybody and gather everyone, pick everyone's property and wallet and all that. And you're standing there and you don't know what to do. You want to stop them if you can. You're in a position where it's physically possible for you to jump one of the gunmen, but then the others will probably shoot you. If you trust your fellow passengers, and if you believe that once you act, they'll all follow you, maybe you'll succeed. Everyone will grab one of the gunmen, and people will keep their goods and without a shot being fired, without any harm done. That's a powerful image. But in real life, number one, there are ways it can go wrong. It probably will go wrong. Someone's going to get killed, even if the robbers do end up being apprehended. And it really doesn't matter what the person was thinking when he took that step. The belief in one's fellow passengers doesn't cause him to act. He might be acting for some different reason. He may just be angry and not thinking at all. Or what if your passenger knows that he has a deadly disease? He'll be dying soon. He's just taken an enormous insurance policy on his life for the well-being of his family. If he dies heroically by taking on these gunmen, he'll be a hero. He'll be remembered forever as having done this good thing. His family will live on the proceeds. He'll be disappointed if he comes through it alive, maybe. It won't be a good result for him unless people take up a collection and get him the latest medical treatment and whatever. There are a zillion ways the little details of life can come together, and that's my main point. We're living in this very complex world, probably more complex than Pascal could have realized, even more complex than William James. It gets more and more incomprehensible every day. There is a school of hermeneutics, that's not it exactly, of apologetics. This comes out of the Dutch Calvinist tradition. It's called presuppositionalism. It's that you can't convince a person of the existence of God or the truth of Scripture by relying on logic, reason, evidence, because that's all tied in with a worldview, a materialist worldview. And that's true. You won't convince me, for instance. I'm an example of that. So you get sometimes people invoking quantum mechanics to the extent that anyone thinks they can understand it, or Gödel's hypothesis, that's a good one, to prove that the whole scientific worldview is imperfect, that the whole thing is incomplete, that there are holes in the whole system. Try to spell that correctly. And only by being convinced of the unreliability of our everyday scientific methods, our everyday way of reasoning through things, can the mind become open to revelation and to the understanding of Scripture. Well, maybe that will happen, but come back to Freud's remark. If you acquiesce in our state of ignorance regarding the cosmos, the ultimate truth or value or whatever, and go no farther, that's fine. There you are. You're not vulnerable to that. I say, and here's where I stand Pascal on his head, as it were. I think the basic outline of his argument makes sense. I don't go where he goes with it. But take the concept. The radical presuppositionalists will say, how can you depend on anything if there's no God to maintain a reasonable universe? How do you know the sun will rise tomorrow? How do you know this or that will happen? And you don't know everything. It's remotely possible that an asteroid will hit the Earth tonight. It's remotely possible, it's even less remotely possible that I or any one of us won't make it through the night. Any one of us can be hit by a truck. Any one of us could have a sudden heart attack or stroke or some disease none of us can even imagine. I don't know that I'll be here tomorrow. So what do I do? Well, go back to Pascal. If you have two alternatives and one of them offers you a gain if you act on it, and the other one doesn't really give you any way of acting at all, go with the probability of getting something out of what you do. We all want things. We all have desires. We all would be happier tomorrow if we do certain things today. And if there is no tomorrow, it's all over. We haven't lost anything. So I just follow the odds. I don't stop paying the rent because the house will be maybe gone next month. I don't stop taking care of my health because I can't account for all the things that can go wrong. And if there is an afterlife, well, if we're all in the hands of an angry God, there's nothing we can do about that. A Calvinist God whom nothing we say or do of our own free will get us anywhere because it's all predestined. Well, that's not a Pascalian bet. Pascal probably would have agreed. A universalist God is more attractive, certainly, but you can't exactly bet on it because you get the same infinite gain whether you believe at the present time or not. What some fundamentalist thinkers dismissively refer to as moralistic therapeutic deism. This is a term someone cooked up 20 years ago for the mindset that seems, from their point of view, to have perverted modern Christian faith among young people. It's the idea that, yes, there's a creator God. He doesn't micromanage the world, like in deism, he just lets it run. But he wants us all to be nice to one another. And he will reward us with heaven if we do the best we can by the moral standards we have. And yes, the idea of God can comfort us in distress. Therapeutic, moralistic deism. They say this is supplanting the true faith. I happen to think that moralistic, something like this mindset, is probably the default mindset of people everywhere, of every faith tradition, who doesn't think too much about scriptures and religious authorities. I think the nicest people, the best people, the people who've kept humankind going this long probably have always adhered to something like this mindset, this moralistic, therapeutic deism. So that's probably the best bet of all. In any case, it gives me something to do. We have no reason to think that the afterlife, if there is one, will involve a totally radical turnabout from what works for us in this world. If we take care of ourselves, if we're good to our neighbors, if we love those whom we are given to love, if we live the best lives we can, whatever we will have, whatever infinitesimal chance there is of enjoying an afterlife. And if not, at least we have this world. We have one another, we have our community. If we work on that, if we live our best lives today, I'm willing to bet that we will satisfy all but the most irascible gods that might happen to exist. And on that note, I leave you to practice the virtue of generosity and support for your community by contributing to today's offering.
Looks out a million miles, and perhaps with pride at herself, but she never smiles. Far and away beyond sleep, or perhaps she's a daytime sleeper. By the universe deserted, she'd tell it to go to hell, and she'd find a body of water or a mirror on which to dwell. So wrap up care in a cobweb and drop it down the well into that world inverted.
And our closing hymn will be number 327. Everybody knows the tune. It's the Ninth Symphony from the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven. And I'm told this is the something anniversary? 200th anniversary of its first, not today, but this year, of its first performance. So you get extra credit if you'll try singing it in German. The German words are in italics underneath. Our music team has assured me they will not be thrown off by the cacophony of hearing us sing two languages simultaneously. So let's go for it. Thank you all. Well done. And now it's time to extinguish our chalice. Let us say together the words in the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Happiness is the only good. The time to be happy is now. The place to be happy is here. The way to be happy is to make others so. Posted.